Right, ladies and gents, welcome to D&T NEA video number 3. So far we've had a look at the design contexts, the 3 design contexts, and what it is you need to do to get your project off to a good start. So you should be now about 6 slides into your project. Today we're going to have a quick look at the design brief, the primary user, and the stakeholders, which are 3 really important things that you all need to have in your NEA. You need to understand what they are and how they're going to play a role in your project as it moves forward. And all of this information that I'm going to give you today is to be put onto one PowerPoint slide. Okay, so there's 3 separate different bits of information going on one PowerPoint slide. Okay, so we'll start off by having a look at the design brief. So here's a little slide that I put together for you to explain what a design brief is, okay? So a design brief is a detailed outline of your NEA. So by now you should have decided which one of those 3 contexts it is that you are most excited about and that you want to use for your NEA, and disregarded the other 2. In the process of doing that, you should also be thinking of what kind of product it is that you are intending to make. You might not know exactly, you might not have specific details yet, but in the back of your mind you should have an idea of the kind of product that you are intending to research, design and make. Okay, so your design brief is a detailed outline of your project. It must clearly state the context, so you need to say in your writing of your design brief which context it is that you have chosen. You need to say which problem it is that you are intending to solve. So say, for example, you are going to use design context 2, so you're going to have a look at people that have limited mobility, and you are going to think of designing a product for people with a limited mobility. You might already be thinking of designing a range of cutlery, for example, for people who suffer from arthritis and can't hold normal cutlery because it's far too small and too lightweight perhaps. And you may already be thinking that that is your product, or a product that potentially you could design and make. You need to think about the tasks that you're going to undertake. So also in the writing of your design brief, you're going to need to say what it is you're going to do. So you're going to research products that already exist. You're going to have a look at how successful they are. You're going to think about the environment, perhaps sustainability, etc., and you are going to mention all of that in your design brief. So the more detail you put in, the better. If you can see any challenges coming your way in the thinking of this, state them as well. So if you think, oh, it's going to be a challenge to do this, or it's going to be a challenge to do that, add those challenges in. And the last thing you need to think of about is special considerations, some of which I've already mentioned. So the more detail you put in here, the better. Okay, marks are available for how detailed and specific your design brief is. It's much better if you put this into like paragraphs rather than bullet points, but for the time being, if bullet points help, then do that. And as it says at the top here, we can always edit it and add to it a little bit later. Such is the beauty of doing all your work on a PowerPoint. If you need to add to it, no problem. Okay, the other 2 things we need to have a look at, these are slightly more complicated. So we need to think about who the stakeholders are in your project and who the primary user are. So I'm going to start with the primary user first. So before you actually firmly decide what NEA design context you are going to do, you must consider the fact that you have to have what's known as a primary user. We used to call this the client. This is somebody that you know that you are actually going to make this product for. Right, so this is one way that the exam board have really ramped up how realistic these NEA projects are by giving you a real life client, or you finding a real life client or primary user that you need to link your project with. So this needs to be one person that you are making this product for. It could be a family member, could be a friend, could be a friend of a friend, or a friend of a family member, or anybody else. It could be a teacher. It could be brother or sister, anybody that you know that you can link to a design context is an absolute must. Okay, you must think that this person must be willing to help you out throughout your project. Their feedback and their help is going to be crucial. In fact, the more you get, the better. So think very carefully before you decide on which context to do, because you are going to need a primary user. Okay, we call our primary user, we just shorten that to PU. So throughout the project, I'll be referring to the PU, excuse me, and you know that's your primary user. Okay. The other thing we need to consider, slightly more complicated, is the stakeholder. Now, again, this is the way the exam board have got a far more complicated and more realistic, a more real life scenario by adding in this element to it. So a stakeholder is anybody who financially benefits from your product. So imagine that your product that you are going to research, design and make is actually going to go on sale and be available to purchase in the real world. The stakeholders are the people that will benefit from your product financially. So that's anybody that has a vested interest. So that would be people, for example, that might have invested in it. It might be people who sell it, shops. It may be people who work in the shops. It may be people that buy the product, etc., or benefit from using the product. These are your stakeholders. And as it says quite clearly, each of the contexts will have a different set of stakeholders. Okay, so you need to think clearly about that. And I know this would be tricky for you to do without us being in a classroom environment to help with that, but the more you get started on this now, the better. So to give you an example of what a good page could look like from an example from before, okay, so the design brief page has got quite a well-written design brief. It's got primary user top right, stakeholders top right. Okay, now if I was going to be critical, I would say that that needs more detail in both the primary user and the stakeholder. But otherwise, it's pretty okay. She's also, this student's added in some areas of research that she is going to study and that she's going to have a look at as she works her way through the project. So if I was marking this, I'd probably be thinking this is in the third mark band. If I wanted it to be securely in the third mark band and maybe in the fourth, then I would consider adding these three things to it. Okay, so perhaps a small piece of research that highlights the problem. Arthritic people suffer badly from not being able to hold cutlery and use knife and fork properly. If there's a bit of research on that, that would be great. Maybe add a small version of your bubble diagram onto this page as well, which helps highlight that you understand fully what problem it is that you're looking at to solve. And I would add more detail into the primary user section, perhaps even a short little introduction to the primary user, telling the reader who they are, how you know them, and so on. Okay, so I hope that helps. Just a last glance at that. Again, any questions, please put them my way via Show My Homework, and I will see you shortly. I hope. Take care.